back to that arrogance.
I understand
institutional arrogance.
All right. So they're willing
I've
to
seen
take
it.
They're willing to take that risk.
Sometimes with vague threats, things that aren't really direct, or you think the kid's a low risk kid.
Okay.
A low risk kid.
So
like Nathan just fails a test and he walks down the hall. Son of a bitch! You guys better not come to school tomorrow.
All right.
What does that mean?
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
right.
That's a very vague threat, but he would be called on that. He would be brought into the office.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily need a cop for that.
And these teams meet on a regular basis.
Usually once a week, or if something comes up.
Okay.
Something comes up. Maybe there was an incident in the school. There was a fight, or maybe a kid got in a car accident. Just all sorts of things can come up, but it's usually once a week.
This is going to sound like a dumb question, but do kids fight in school like they used to?
They fight over the internet. Nathan's undefeated on TikTok, aren't you, Nate? Instagram?
I've made at least like 4 kids I went to high school with kill themselves. So
Jesus,
that's nice.
I make tally marks on the back of my phone like I'm a hunter. Like 1, 2, 3, cross it off. That's 5 from my math class.
Wow. And they don't fight as much as they used to.
I remember there were still like physical fights in my high school. Like I still saw a physical fight. Kids still physically fight. It still happens. It just also now happens on the internet.
And it sometimes happens. It starts on the internet and then winds up in the physical. But it's not like it used to be. Not like
it's a little. It's more cyberbullying.
Yeah.
Facebook comments, Instagram comments, Snapchat comments. And a lot of that's more because Nathan can get into a physical altercation with someone, and if only 2 people see it, then he might not be embarrassed the next day because only 2 or 3 people know about it. But if someone makes a comment about Nathan on Instagram or Facebook, thousands and thousands of people can see it. Now, he's very embarrassed. Yeah. He's upset. And this is where this thing spiraled out of control. This is where kids get involved in these school violence situations because everyone knows about it nowadays via the internet.
And this explains why those 4 people that Nathan went to school with, they all killed themselves because he's like, I just had sex with Jamie blank, 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 and she'll kill herself.
Oh, my God, not Nathan. Yeah, so it's different nowadays in comparison to like 30 years ago.
All right. Now, here's something, just go back to this assessment team thing. You mentioned law enforcement, school, principal, guidance counselor, social services, and Department of Mental Health. I know you've got probably at least 2, and probably, I guess within the school, they probably can talk about, I would think in that environment, they'd be able to talk frankly about students.
Yes.
But not everybody can talk frankly about them, or can they?
No, what happens is you have the HIPAA and they have the privacy rights, special more in mental health and social services with the kids, medical history or family history. So what you see in those situations and where there's an issue is they'll be talking about a kid who might have made a threat.
Yep.
And the threat might be kind of a low risk threat. And as you're talking about it, you're kind of caught in the middle. Well, should we suspend this kid? What should we do with this kid? Well, right next to you is a mental health worker who's withholding information that although this kid made a low-risk threat, for the past month, he's been treated for delusions and potential schizophrenia as a 16-year-old. So that right there, the mental health component just amps that up to the very next level. Gee, we should know that.
That's important. We should
know that stuff.
Now, how come they can't let that? Because of HIPAA. But
good social workers or good mental health workers will always say, off the record, little Jimmy tried to kill himself a month ago, or little Jimmy's father just committed suicide, or little Jimmy has a history of schizophrenia in his family, and he's being looked at that right now. So that threat and that mental health component, high risk right there. Some people will say it. Others won't say it. And they really can make a situation go really bad by withholding that information. I personally used to tell them, just don't even come to the meeting. Don't even come to the meeting because we're trying to do something here to keep people safe. You have vital information. That's vital information. Yeah. That's like over-the-top information.
Okay, so we would ask them for You would tell them not to come to the meeting?
Yeah, I wasn't. I don't think I was well liked in some of those meetings back in the day. But with the police officer, the buck stops with the cop.
But you couldn't coerce them into giving you off-the-record information?
Technically or even legally, you're really not supposed to say it. And we see that in law enforcement. Mental health programs will say, hey, can you go to a certain address and do a mental health well-being on one of our clients?
Right.
And we'll say, what's the problem?
They say, we can't
And they'll say, we can't tell you. And then we'll say, well, we're not going to go check him. Because if he's in there with a knife threatening to kill himself and you're going to protect his HIPAA rights, do you think we're going to have 4 cops go to the door and the minute they open the door, he's going to attack him with a knife?
It happened in a community near here.
It happens all the time.
Just like that.
To this day, it happens.
And the cop told me, I think I might have talked about this before, but the guy had a weapon behind the door.
Absolutely.
And they got him out from behind the door, but then they found the weapon afterwards.
And a lot of times these mental health workers, they have that information, but they won't give it to you.
It's funny. Reporters do it all the time. It's like, well, why, we'll do this. It's like, well, what kind of a thing would be covered by this? And then they give you the hypothetical, which is the thing. So I guess
good seasoned social workers or mental health workers
will say, well, it could be,
will give you the information, whether it be directly or indirectly. You will know going in, but there are a percentage, and we deal with them all the time. Or I should say, I used to deal with them when I was working. And you're just shaking your head, and we basically say we're not sending anyone into a blind situation. You have your supervisor call the police station or have your supervisor call the school, and we need that information because we have 5 officers who could be at risk. Or if it's a school setting, we have 1,000 students who could be at risk because you don't want to tell us that little Jimmy just was just diagnosed with delusional schizophrenia.
Right. Yeah.
Right? And he's thinking that everyone in the school wants to shoot him. So he's coming to school with a gun the next day.
Yeah.
I'll shut up. Go ahead.
No, it's one of these things. I agree. I completely agree with you. It's one of these things that it's one of those rules that there should be a workaround. Yeah. The rule is you can't say.
There's enough that work around it.
Yes.
But there's also a percentage that don't work around it. And a lot of times you see in workplace shootings, school shootings, sexual assaults that happen because you have sex offenders walking the streets that shouldn't be, things like that. The information isn't given to a judge who's doing a bail hearing and stuff like that.
Like the arsonist in my story.
Same thing. And it's people's lives are at risk. Innocent people are at risk.
Now let me ask you this question. Last Friday was the shoot up your school day.
Yep.
Would you have sent, if you had kids who were high school age, would you have sent them in?
I would have, because I kind of knew what was going on. I knew that it was so vague that it wasn't necessarily in the North Shore of Massachusetts. It was a countrywide threat. It could happen any time, any place, anywhere. So if that's the case, I'll just never let my kids go to school.
Right.
But if I knew more information and they had more information, they wouldn't have had school. The community I live in and the mayor that runs this city would have shut everything down based on his past history, which is a good thing.
I sent my
kids don't need to go to school.
I sent my daughter. Well, the other thing about it is, once this stuff starts happening, if you start closing your schools, then there's a whole different issue of how reactive are you being?
Yeah, you really got to do your homework, and you have to have good investigators, and you really got to look and to try to find who's actually making these threats and do a threat assessment and try to figure out, and just don't react, just on a whim. But also, you still need to react. There was three police cruisers at that high school, and there was cops at every other elementary school in the city.
I sent my daughter in because she had really annoyed me.
Yeah,
no,
I know your daughter. Ain't no one gonna mess with her.
She's She's tough. All 5'3" of her.
Yeah.
All right, so what have we got on this?
Coming down to the end here, we got the pros and cons. So the pros of a threat assessment team is you can identify a potentially violent situation in a person. You can prevent it before it happens. Ultimately, you're going to save lives, and it also helps to create a safe culture in the school. Because if everyone's aware of what's going on with certain kids, if there's 1,000 kids in the school, no one's going to know every one of them. But if 5 or 6 people on a threat assessment team bring their information, and during a 1-hour meeting, you've talked about 10 kids and you've identified 10 kids, brings it to.
Is 10 kids, is that a real number?
I would say 10. I would say it all depends on the situation.
At a good size,
1,000 kids,
medium size.
10 might be low. It goes in waves.
Okay,
it really does goes in waves.
All right,
things can happen. Like you could have a student who was injured, or killed in a car accident, or someone might have been sexually assaulted, or you could in a large inner city school, you could have rival gangs in there, and someone gets shot over the weekend. Now you got huge risk right there, especially inner city New York and places like that. You could have 40 or 50 kids. How do you handle that?
And the cons of having this threat assessment team, obviously we start with the human element, which is what happened at Oxford High School.
The human element, based on your training, your education, your experience, your life experience.
Your hubris.
Yep,
Your hubris.
Too much pride.
Yeah.
You make the wrong decision.
Yeah. What are the other cons?
Some have said that it can be prejudicial to certain races.
Okay.
I think my experience, there's always kids in a school setting that might have learning disabilities, autism and stuff like that. And sometimes those kids will make comments that they really don't mean.
Oh, okay.
Okay. But unfortunately, the comment was made.
Yep.
And they have to deal with it because you can't dismiss it because little Mikey has autism and he blurts out things uncontrollably sometime and he makes comments and he has, temper tantrums. Should you handle him any different than Nathan, who's 100% cognitively functioning, and he makes a comment and Nathan gets arrested, but the kid with autism doesn't? So the thing is that most communities will default that even the kid with the learning disability might get arrested.
Yeah, that's obviously.
Yes, go ahead, Nathan.
I have a little story.
Okay.
From high school. We went on a field trip. I was a part of a class, took us on a field trip, and it was 4 kids to a room. You got to choose your roommates. It was just me, 2 other kids, 3 of us. And we thought, just 3 of us, that'd be fine. Then one of the teachers said, hey, this kid doesn't have a room. He doesn't have roommates. It's because no one liked this kid. He was a fucking moron and no one liked him.
All right.
And so she's like, you're going to take him. And we were like reluctant, but we were like,
saying to you,
fine.
We need you. The teacher said to you, we need you to be good human beings and help little Jimmy.
Sure.
Even if he threatened to kill his gym teacher.
Here's the thing about this kid is that while we were on the trip, he bought a knife at a gift shop. He bought a knife. And I was just sitting next to him, like, what's in your hand? He's like, I bought a knife. It had my name on it. He was a little touched.
Yeah.
And he's like, I bought a knife. And so immediately, like there are other kids who are just like, whatever. It's like, you don't have to fucking sleep with this idiot. And so eventually I go up to a teacher and she's like, do you really feel unsafe? I'm like, yeah, I do feel unsafe that this fucking troglodyte bought a knife and now he's going to sleep next to me with his precious little knife. Needless to say, he had the knife taken away from him, and then for the rest of the trip, me and my roommates bullied him relentlessly.
That made it even better.
Yeah.
And so what I think my strategy was in high school is, if you see a high-risk kid who might do something fucky, bully the shit out of him until his self-esteem is so low he can't even convince himself to bring a gun to school. I wouldn't be able to do it. That's what you got to do. Break them down.
There you go. My advice always is to befriend those kids, because so when they do go off, they're like, oh, gee, Nathan or Dale was very nice to me, and they'll walk right by you, and they'll go to Rattigan.
Yeah, go to me.
Rattigan, who used to pick on him.
Well, I would never pick on him.
That is 100% accurate.
Be nice.
You've seen that
Yeah.
in workplace shootings and school shootings. They will walk past someone that either treated them differently, nice, or in contrast to that, they will go directly toward someone who treated them like shit.
Like Nathan.
Yeah. So it always behooves you to be friends with
what's also
scary
people. You know what's also a good idea? You know what also is a benefit of treating people with kindness?
What's that?
It's a nice thing to do.
It is. Always
it's a good thing to do. Anything else for the cons? I know we got one.
No, I think the one more is that you have a person like the gang member from Worcester, Massachusetts, who the minute he walked into the school, he was high risk.
Yeah.
But he never did anything in our setting. And he did 3 months there. And he was a polite kid. He was a nice kid. You know, so
Yeah.
but we watched him. I never took my eye on the kid 'cause I
Yeah.
never knew if he was going to do something.
You know something.
So people get stereotyped unfairly.
Right. And obviously, one of the other issues is COVID.
There's a threat out there, obvious, and there's high risk situations.